All right, so let's cover one of the more cited finance white papers. This is BlackRock's To Spend or Not to Spend white paper. I covered The Rise of the Economy by Morgan Stanley in the past, and that's quite popular in search. So perhaps you're looking at some classical finance white papers, and well, then this is the correct video for you. Congrats on searching for it. So regarding this study, the title here will be confirmed in the first bar chart, and then we will go into the 6 main findings here. So some retirees don't need to spend, some don't want to, but many more have to. What exactly do they mean with this? Well, they did a survey as a prerequisite to this study where they asked households that had been retired here for 17 to 18 years. They divided into groups, so we can see in the little text here that 0 to less than 200,000 is the lowest wealth, and then the highest wealth is those that have assets higher than $500,000 American dollars in this case. And then we have a medium segment as well. So once you go into retirement and you have been retired for some time, how is the total amount of assets evolving? Well, we see here roughly 35% for all wealth categories actually have more assets 17 to 18 years into retirement than they have at the date when they retire. And this is very common. It's very hard to actually get your head around it in terms of compounding. It's a hard process to comprehend for the human mind. It's not very logical. We like to think in terms of linearity, but that's not the nature of assets. And you've seen on the channel how the growth portfolio just exploded, getting to 100K at 27 and then getting to 1 million at year 31. It goes very, very quick with assets. In terms of the lowest wealth figure, however, we see something a bit disturbing. Roughly a third here, a little more, is running down the clock on the assets. And you can argue that it's natural, you're not going to live forever, so you don't need the assets to last forever. However, this has some psychological impact on spending behavior in retirement. So we have 6 major behaviors here, some key findings that I will just cover and do some commentary on. So then you know what the white paper is all about. So we can see that some retirees prefer to keep their assets untouched. I've seen this in real life as well with a retiree who was a director at a large insurance company who had a lot of assets in stocks and some rental properties, but still chose to do a little bit of freelancing just to not touch the assets. So a common type of behavior. So I'll just read real quickly for those of you who are listening. So very few want to tap into their savings to finance their spending in retirement, especially those with high levels of assets who are very content to leave all or a significant amount of savings unspent. Only 1 in 4 feels they will have to spend down principal at all to fund their desired lifestyle. For most, retirement is not a time to live it up. It's more important to feel financially secure, and I can recognize this very much. The feeling of having a lot of assets is quite the amazing one. It's like a nice little fortress around you, and you see a lot of uncertainty around yourself in the world. You see it in the workplace with layoffs everywhere, and you see it in retirement with uncertainty in the world, and just having those assets there gives a nice feeling of safety. And I can understand people being hesitant to spend down and then perhaps lose that feeling of safety. How do you put a price on that? In terms of spending plans, so retirees more often plan to spend consistently increasing with age. And then just a percentage of people who spend, consistently, 43, and then 25% do not have any spending plan. Breaking it down, some want to spend more when they're healthy, and then less when they're older, and vice versa. So, and this is very interesting, like we have some sort of plan going into retirement, and I've done some exercising of my spending muscles and just tried to see how it feels to spend dividends, sell off a little bit of assets, just spend a little bit more. I managed to spend 70,000 euros in 2025, and that was with me trying really, really hard, traveling more than 4 months of the year, and it's not easy to spend, and I don't think it's going to get easier with age. I think that a lot of people are fooling themselves in terms of the plan that they set and the desired behavior. For example, a personal example here is when I go to Thailand and do Muay Thai for a month. I relax a little bit in the beginning. I don't do too much sparring the first 2 weeks, and then I really get into it the last 2 weeks. And you get bruised up from all that sparring, you get the bruises on the legs, on the arms, blocking kicks, getting leg kicked, all of that. And then when you get back to the home country from such a trip, you just want to relax a little bit, heal up. You don't really have that big adventurous desire to go on another trip straight away. You just want to spend some, or at least in my case, I just want to spend some time in my home country, eat a lot of steak, smoke cigars, gain back all the weight that I lose down there, unfortunately, on good dinners. But it's not easy to spend, and as we age, it just takes longer and longer to recover. When I was in my 20s, I could fight all day, but now that I'm in my 30s, I need a little bit of rest. And then I know that as I get into my 40s, 50s, hopefully, 60s and 70s also, well, it's going to, take longer and longer to rest in between adventures. And then spending becomes a lot harder unless you find, other new hobbies. So retirees retain their accumulation mindset. This is very common for people who have a lot of assets. It's very hard to go from a saving mindset all of your life and all of a sudden flip into a spending mindset. Spending is an art, it's a skill, you get better at it the more you do it and exercise it, just like saving. And flipping a switch, it's not going to happen. I see in the FIRE community, for example, on Reddit and online forums, people commenting about the boring middle all the time, as they call it. The middle years when they let the assets grow and save aggressively, and then one day, once they hit a magical number in retirement, they will all of a sudden flip a switch and start living a fun and exciting life. It doesn't really work like that. You need to get some hobbies going. You need to, this is not the boring middle. It's your life, and it can easily go to extremes. That's one of the criticisms against the FIRE movement for sure. So this accumulation mindset is flagged down in BlackRock's report here as well. Retirees with the pension income least likely to spend down because they don't need to. Yes, in the past we've had some great pension systems in place, but as they comment here, unfortunately, with pensions soon becoming a thing of the past, we will see fewer and fewer people retire with this source of income. So I will not spend too much time on finding number 4, as it will just be less and less relevant. It's already, this was posted in 2020. Now, 6 years later, this is even less relevant, and it will continue to lose relevancy in the modern economy. And men and women approach finances and retirement differently, and for good reason. So we see that retired women are more risk averse, whereas retired men take more risk. And I think this is very true throughout our entire lives. I'm certainly very comfortable with taking a lot of risk, investing in growth stocks, moving around the world to chase higher paychecks in my younger years, doing a lot of very, very risky things that paid off. We see, for example, on the very extreme end, when you see people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, who just take on all the risk and just win coin flip after coin flip after coin flip in the capitalistic game. Just extreme risk, being content with that. And this is just gendered behavior that they are pointing out in this report, and then they point to some socially acceptable reasons for this. With more recent retirees being less optimistic as the final finding, and I think that this comes down to uncertainty. The director that I spoke about, who retired quite young, he's been retired now for quite a few years, since 2023. Yeah, and as the years go, you feel more comfortable. You see that your spending plan is holding, and you're able to cope with it. You're able to slow down. You're able to let all of these years of stress from the workplace, slowly being brushed off your back. You're not carrying that heavy load anymore. And then we see happiness increasing by a lot. We've seen this in studies from my old university as well, Stockholm School of Economics. They have a professor over there focusing on happiness, and they did some surveys confirming basically this type of behavior, with happiness being higher at young ages, and then as you become a early adult, you have maximum unhappiness throughout the working years. I wonder why, And then as you retire and have been in retirement for some time, well, you are very, very optimistic. So just human psychology on full display, and all of the different, both age-related and gender-related financial behaviors that we see as we close in on retirement are being pointed out in this report here. To spend or not to spend by BlackRock. And I think that it's important to point out these types of behavioral economics that we see in people. I see them in myself all the time. It's important to be mindful of them. I do some reflection around my own behaviors, especially when I just sit out on my balcony smoking a cigar. Then the mind quiets down and I have some time to think around budgeting, around the way that I spend my money. It's very important to do that from time to time. I think that's the biggest lesson that we can bring from this report. Take some time to think about your own behavior, where in these stereotypes that you fit in, and if you're happy with it being that way, with the way you're planning, with the way you're spending, with the way you want to leave assets untouched, let them accumulate, spend them. It trickles down into investing decisions as well. We see, for example, dividend investing being a good way for people who are very uncomfortable touching the principal, whereas people who are more risk tolerant can look at perhaps growth stocks. So know yourself, then you will know your investing style, and you will also be able to live, in my opinion, a more full life, when you align your goals with your investings. Very, very important to have that alignment. All right, that's been it for this video, covering a slightly famous BlackRock report in this case. And as always, hope you guys make a ton of money, whatever investments you decide to make. Take care now. Bye bye.